I'm your host, Annie Bowles, and this is News du Jour. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the News du Jour. Happy Tuesday. What day of the week is it? Does anyone else do this where you're going on a trip and suddenly your brain is just like overtaken by everything, all the moving parts? It's especially tough when you have a kid, especially a new child, where, you know, you want to leave your house in a good place so you're cleaning, but you're also having to pack for them and worry about every contingency and pack for yourself and also do your job and all the normal things. It's a lot. So just trying to put one foot in front of the other these days. And I'm super excited for a trip. So just trying to focus my energy that direction. Anywho, we have a ton of news to go over for today, as per usual. So let's go ahead and hop into it. Most of our news today is going to be centered around the Ukraine-Russia conflict, but I'm going to go ahead and start with something else, which is the Rihanna halftime show. So after having a baby, Rihanna has announced a major, not so casual comeback. The NFL Super Bowl halftime show. On February 12th, we will see the legendary Rihanna perform for the first time in a long time. She announced the news on her Instagram, which had not seen a post from her since early May, with her tattooed hand holding an NFL football. The primary sponsor this year will also be Apple Music, which is interesting because they are replacing Pepsi. Very exciting changes, and cannot wait to see her perform. So next up, we are just going to run through a bunch of stories, actually mostly having to do with Russia. So there's a lot to go over here. First up, a shooting in Russia. So I wanted to go ahead and issue a content warning here. This has less to do with the war and it's kind of a one-off, but it happened in Russia. So that's why I'm grouping it here. But a gunman actually came into a elementary school in Russia and shot 39 people, killing 15 of those before killing himself. And I use the term elementary school lightly. They take students from age 1 to age 11. So I don't know in the US if we have anything like equivalent to that, but basically an elementary school. The shooter was 34 years old and had reportedly attended the school himself back in the day. He wore Nazi symbols on his t-shirt the day of the shooting as well, but his motivations are not immediately clear, or at least they haven't been released to the press as of yet. 11 of those he killed yesterday were children. Our thoughts go out to all their parents. Putin came out condemning the attack, of course, as an act of terrorism. But speaking of Putin and terrorism, a lot of Russian men are right now fleeing the country ahead of a potential draft. Or maybe one that's already underway. Some men are just outright refusing to comply with orders to join the military. Putin is picking up people with absolutely no military experience to go and fight in Ukraine. And that is causing a lot of people in Russia to want to escape, because this is a cause that the people of Russia do not seem to care about, let alone want to die for. And now rumors are circulating that Putin might be closing the nation's borders soon. And this has prompted a lot of people to flee, like by the thousands. For example, approximately 2,500 cars have been seen trying to cross the border from Russia into Georgia. And that's only one location. Men between the ages of 18 and 35 have already been ordered not to leave certain areas of Russia and may be called into military duty. Telegram channels have developed now as well to help people coordinate and escape out of the country. Men are literally being rounded up in the middle of the night to go off and fight, so everyone is just scared. Technically, Russia has only said that they're calling up their reserves. That's their official statement. But now we know that they're actually taking up men with no military background as well. So it seems like almost a secret draft system is going on, or just snatching people. But what's crazy is it gets worse. Over in Ukraine, Russia is forcing Ukrainians to go and fight against their own country and kill their own countrymen. Additionally, Russia is using Ukrainian captives against their own people. As we were just saying, Russia is slowly hemorrhaging troops, and so they have now taken to turning prisoners of war into soldiers. Ukrainian men have now taken to breaking their own limbs in order to avoid having to fight on behalf of Russia. Or they've been hiding in basements or attempting to flee, but the Russians are still seeking them out. Additionally, over in Crimea, which is technically an area occupied by Russia since before this war began, the ethnic minority group that has traditionally been persecuted by the Russians, they are the ones disproportionately being called up to fight on behalf of Russia. So 80% of the summons in Crimea, according to NPR, have been going to people of this ethnic background. But Russia is threatening that anyone, whether they're Russian, Ukrainian, or Crimean, who refuses to take part in the military once called up, will be taken to the front lines without weaponry. And this leads me to touch on the protests going on in Russia. So, protests have now broken out all over Russia against what Putin calls the partial mobilization. So, he's using that term. Initially, we understood that to mean that he was just calling up the reserves, because that's what it sounded like. But the partial mobilization seems to be also snatching men with no military experience in the middle of the night out of their beds to go and fight in Ukraine. Police are, of course, resorting to the usual tactics to try and clear up these protests, tear gas, firing into the air, and arresting people. But it's not helping. NPR also reported that there are many more women coming forward to protest now because it may be their husband or their brother or their boyfriend or their father who is being called up and they want them at home. Additionally, men are worried that showing their face at a protest might lead to them getting arrested and then drafted, which is the rumor that is circulating right now, is that if you get arrested protesting the war, you're going to end up fighting in the war. So really crazy times. Things are kind of exploding all over the country, but there are a few cities where the protests are getting really bad. So we'll definitely keep you guys posted on that. Additionally, Germany is right now refusing sending tanks to Ukraine. So that is kind of a turn of events that is interesting. Ukraine is asking Germany for these tanks, and they're basically saying, no, we don't want to escalate things between NATO and Russia any further than they already are. So I thought that was interesting and just wanted to note that for you guys as well. Things seem to be kind of unraveling for Russia and headed in a really bad direction for them. But that's not to say that we can let off the gas or stop worrying about it. This war is still underway. There's still people being killed and abused every day in Ukraine. So it's something we definitely need to keep our eyes on and not just turn a deaf ear or a blind eye to it, because there's atrocities being committed all over the country and we need to keep the pressure on. We'll keep you guys posted. So lastly for today, we're going to touch on a far-right leader becoming Italy's first female prime minister. So this isn't for sure, but it seems very likely at this time that Giorgia Meloni, an Italian woman who grew up in a pretty progressive leftist community in Rome, is becoming Italy's first female prime minister. Now, despite this background of where she grew up, she ended up becoming this far-right leader. And actually, she helped found the group Nationalist Brothers of Italy, which is a line taken from their national anthem. But before that, in her youth, she actually led a youth group that was originally tied to Italy's fascist Mussolini. And this initially had people worried that she might actually be some sort of neo-fascist, modern fascist herself. But others argued that Meloni had come a long way and that she'd left those beliefs behind her and in her past, in her youth. And she was apparently able to persuade people of this, because she is now on her way to becoming Italy's prime minister with 26% of the vote, which in their system is a very large margin to be leading by. She is known as a very talented politician who kind of shifted her party's image from far right to moderate, even though they still maintain that far right identity. She's really trying to shift them towards the middle, and she's positioned herself as a defender of traditional family values. She tells everyone that she is a woman, a Christian, and a mother, and that is kind of her tagline. But she is deeply in support of Ukraine and NATO, and she claims her goal is to unite the country. And she's going to have to, because if she's going to stay prime minister and maintain that power, she's got to bring people into the middle, because in Italy, power can shift on a dime. And that is the news du jour. Today, I wanted to leave you guys with the quote, "Riot is the language of the voiceless." If you enjoyed this episode, please consider becoming a patron of our podcast. For $7.99 a month, you can unlock tons of perks like breaking news text messages so that you're never out of the loop. Tons of bonus episodes are already up there ready for you to binge, and a discussion board full of networking opportunities and much more. Go to www.patreon.com/sugarfree media today to become a patron. This is the best way to support our show. Our patrons make News du Jour possible. But a couple other ways to support our podcast are rate and review on whatever podcast platform you use to listen, share on your social media, you have influence, tell your friends, family, and colleagues that you love News du Jour and why you listen. You can also follow us on social media under sugarfreemedia.co on Instagram, just sugarfreemedia, all one word, on TikTok, and sugarfree_media on Twitter. We also have a weekend newsletter called Dreamers Digest that's full of dreamy content recommendations for your weekend, and a life update from yours truly. Sign up today on our website, www.sugarfreemedia.co. Our music is by Joey Lavoie and Nicholas Foster. Our cover art is by Hannah Pierce Photography. Our Sugar Free Media logo is by Catherine Jezik Designs. Any twinkling or little footsteps you might hear in the background are by my dog, Rhett. He's a rescue pup and always records with me. We appreciate you listening and look forward to telling you about the news again next time on News du Jour.
broadcasting from Oklahoma.